Hey, everybody. Welcome and thanks for joining us this afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about how you can improve your approach to HCM through the balance of 2024. I'm Bruce Belvin, founder and CEO at OneDataSource. And today I'm joined by Roger Martinez, who's the Senior District Manager at Proliant. I'll allow Roger to introduce himself and Proliant in a moment once I'm through with a few quick housekeeping items. With respect to your time, we'll try to keep it on schedule. Stay right at that 25-minute mark for the presentation, and we'll have time for some Q&A at the end. So please feel free to ask questions you may have in the chat, and we want you to walk away with as much value as possible. And then we'll be sure to send you the recording by Tuesday of next week. Should you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to mine or Roger's email directly. Again, looking forward to providing you with an HCM roadmap for 2024, along with answering any of your key questions today. So today, we'll equip you with information you need to feel confident about your HCM operation through the remainder of the year. As you all know, the labor market has been difficult to navigate at times over the last few years. Roger will level set on current market trends, bring you up to date a bit. We'll also be discussing innovations, some that are just even table stakes, that can help you meet market demands and evolve your people programs. Compliance is another interesting topic. Roger will share everything you need to know to be aware of to remain compliant through this calendar year. And then finally, we'll close by answering your questions. Again, feel free to put questions in the chat so we can see them and respond to them as we get to the end of the presentation. So just quickly before handing off to Roger, I'll share about OneDataSource. We already work with many multi-unit operators across the country. We've been around for a couple of decades. And it was really my need to solve my own challenges operating a multi-brand restaurant franchise of about 70 stores. And so along with the deep industry knowledge and relationships I built over several decades, that led me to found OneDataSource. Early days showing it to some peers for my own, developing what I needed just for my own company. They loved the solution and really drove the idea to build it into a software as a solution opportunity to share with other franchisees. We support over 14,000 QSR restaurants at this point. That's over 60 brands. I think it's actually closer to 70 since we've updated our tracker. We work with franchisees and operating groups that operate anywhere from 4 or 5 restaurants up to over 1,000. And our solutions provide operational flexibility and the ability to operate or scale without the need to add significant headcount. Keep your G&A very efficient. Our whole team has deep restaurant expertise, and we aim to be a trusted consultative partner, not just a vendor to our clients. Clients operate well over $10 billion in revenue a year, and we process that data going into accounting systems for our customers, as well as, like we're talking about today, payroll, HCM systems, et cetera. So with that, I'll hand it over to Roger and let him talk to you for a few minutes.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you very much. So before I introduce myself and Proliant, we're just going to take some, just kind of go over a little bit what we're going to talk about, and we're going to take some broad strokes. Everything that I'm going to talk about is based on, the conversations that we've had with QSR groups, which and primarily also the things that we're seeing are going to affect QSR groups significantly, especially multi-brand, multi-state throughout the year. So again, we're going to hit on some topics that have been coming up reoccurringly over the past year, but we want to give you guys information. But I do also want to tell you about Proliant. Proliant's been here for about 27 years. We grew out of an accounting firm that was actually working already with lots of multi-brand franchises back about 30 years ago. So they saw the need for a payroll platform to be able to do a lot of cross-company, cross-ID reporting, while having all the tools and integrations necessary to be able to kind of keep things as efficient and compliant as possible. We are very much based in technology. We're very much based in customer service. I think the key thing to our platform really is the ease of use for your employees and for your managers in order to get through the things that they need to do every day and communicate and collaborate with your employees. I personally have worked and done presentations like this for QSR brands at trade shows for close to 18 years, and I've been very happy to be working with OneDataSource since almost their inception. So We're going to go through this kind of quickly, and these are, things. So if you see little, in the chat room, if you want to ask some questions, please go ahead and I'll try to address this, but we're going to be taking some broad strokes. So why don't we get right into it? Okay. Now, this is something that, and I'm sure most of you already have pay cards, but one of the things that I'm always advocating for, and that we assist, customers and clients of all sizes, because we work with franchise groups from 1 locations to, 400 locations, multi-state and everything in between. So everything's got to be customized. But as you can see, there was a lot of opportunity there. You can mandate, paperless payroll. And that is incredibly useful to you if shipping costs. Beyond that, we'll get that in a second. But you can see, it's pretty much open in most of the country. You can't do it everywhere. However, I have several groups who work in states that are, as you can see, they're dark colored, who have not, giving you the ability to mandate paperless payroll, where they've gotten very creative. I've got, clients that have up to 5,000 employees that are entirely paperless. What are the advantages? Of course, I mean, right off the bat, if you've got 80 locations, getting rid of those shipping costs is tremendous. Aside from that, what I've seen, because I've consulted with groups all across the country, hurricanes, earthquake, snowstorms, you name it. FedEx isn't going to show up. UPS isn't going to show. During the pandemic, that actually drove a lot of people to go through to pay cards because of all the protocols that FedEx and UPS would have, where they weren't dropping off payroll if the clients weren't doing it. So it really ensures that everyone's getting paid. They're very easy to implement. And I'm going to bump up camera here for a second. I meant to do that a second ago to not be a distraction. They're very easy to implement into your process. If you're already using pay cards and they're not being registered by your current provider, most reputable providers out there, and certainly Proliant will be able to work with most providers out there to register those pay cards on your behalf in your process. Great for paying terminated employees instantly, depending on the state that you're in. Boom, no paper check, no live check. You can just post it to your pay card and you're done with it. Most of these programs, again, I think most of you, if you're not using it, we can certainly guide you through it, but most of them have no access to, no fees to employers, no fees to employees. The access is actually probably greater on most of the programs than I have at Wells Fargo branches. And many of them have, savings programs built in. So if you're unhappy with your solution, if you want to get some tips, which we'll talk about next slide, please, Michael, on how you can do this, on certain states, because I know Bruce knows this. He had a former client that I think had 20,000 employees all over those states that you can't mandate it, but he got creative with the food program. He got creative with making sure he incentivized and let the employees know what the benefits were for being on a pay card or direct deposit. And he got virtually paperless. I mean, with a very rare instance. So it is possible to do it, educate it. There'll never be a lost check. No more running to banks, no more running, check cashing loans. You know how bad that can be. So, you can get adoption. There is ways to getting adoption if you can't mandate. Next slide, please. So, Bruce had a great webinar with Rain, who were also integrated, another partner of OneDataSource, a couple of months ago. So earned wage access is something that I think was starting to get talked about 5 years ago. Started to get a lot of questions from it. Now, fast forward to now, now I see that, on signs at QSR brands all over the country, get paid today. And that's kind of where the sentiment is. Most employees, feel that they should have access to it. They're, obviously, the whole payday loan industry will want to try to, get employees, your employees, to not be victimized by that. But this is also a way to kind of remain competitive. Now, one thing which is kind of new here over the past couple of years is states are passing earned wage access laws themselves. I think now Nevada, Arizona, Florida, Hawaii, Kentucky, most recently Wisconsin, have laws in place where, and they vary from state to state. Most of them have to do with your earned wage access provider being licensed in that state. Many of them have to do with just employee protections on fees. And this is probably the most important thing, is many of them have limits on the fees that you can charge for earned wage access. So depending on the provider that you may or might not be using or considering, if you're in one of those states, you certainly don't want to choose a provider that's going to have it's going to be non-compliant with their fee limitations. So Proliant is integrated with most of the larger providers out there. We often, when we're coming with a new group, oh, he beat me, but we have one too. So yes, we have. This is kind of rare in a for an HCM company to have their own built-in earned wage access. So obviously the advantage that we feel is that it's integrated into our employee self-service application, where most of the employees are looking at their PTO and communicating with their managers and collaborating with folks. So we have one as well, and it's very easy to use. Same sort of statistics as far as the reasons to use it. But again, this is where I see now it's coming up pretty much in every conversation with the major quick service restaurant operator. So yeah, I mean, I don't need to tell a lot of you guys if you're doing, if you're in the restaurant business, but I've had several examples of groups that have had to close locations simply because they don't have the people to staff them. And restaurant business, QSR hospitality has one of the highest rates out there. The things that now are kind of prevalent everywhere, where why can't I keep an employee? Why am I losing so many people? Statistically wise, it's like the lack of employee recognition and communication within the company that they're being heard are kind of the highest contributing factors. No morale and engagement really are kind of the highest problems with there. These are the reasons why it's happening. So, I mean, the white glove service, you obviously, want to have that from whoever is helping you put together a strategy, for your team. You want to make sure that your team and your managers and your regionals, however you're structured, has access to, to a good resource like Proliant. But, part of that is don't have ineffective recruitment. Make sure you have, a process, a module where, your managers are able to communicate with applicants and get them those offers very quickly. I think the last stat I saw was like every hour you delay in giving that, reaching out to that applicant, your chances of getting that applicant and someone else getting it goes down exponentially, 50%, 50%, 50%. So make sure you have something that's very easy to use for everyone that's involved. That's kind of what I'm saying there. The longer it takes to get back to an applicant, the chance of losing them is going to be increased. Retention begins at onboarding. So make sure that whatever you're doing, however you're doing it, whether it's centralized at a location, there is an easy to use way for them to, fill out their forms, an easy way for you to collect WOTC integrated. This is what I see a lot too. And I'll stop for a second because Proliant, we also do in-house our own WOTC credits. So what I see a lot of times, and now mind you, we're also integrated with a lot of other WOTC providers, but a lot of times I see folks in their onboarding process where they have redirects set up, and what's happening is that they're not being forced to actually screen for those credits. So they're getting redirected to a different WOTC processor. But it's not mandatory, so I see a lot of folks missing credits. So make sure that your WOTC is integrated in your onboarding, and it's an easy process and easy for your employees to understand. So now, in almost every conversation that I also have with QSR groups, the subject, which never really came up about 4 or 5 years ago now, is more of an integrated performance management sort of a system, a way to be able to kind of do reviews, coaching, peer-to-peer recognition within the organization, to give encouragement and recognition, to kind of give that boost of morale to the employees, to kind of keep them going. And a happier employee is going to be a happier experience, a better experience for your customers when they walk in the door. Make sure you have processes for all that in place to keep your employees happy. And of course, coming out of the pandemic, people going remote and that terrible period, implement an employee wellness program. There's lots of programs out there, supplemental programs that are pre-tax that can, increase the employee's net pay, while reducing the employer's FICA, that provide, wellness counseling, mental health resources that you can add with, pretty easily into your organization. We're familiar with a lot of them. We work with a lot of them in quick service restaurants. So if you have any specific questions on those type of programs, make sure you reach out, because we can certainly help. Pay transparency is sort of kind of associated with employee wellness and happiness, because it's when companies are providing employees with the access about their colleagues' salaries, also giving them first sort of dibs on promotions within the company. So there's already laws being passed. The blue ones already have them enacted. The light blue ones are kind of getting them in place. And then the rest of them are kind of open, but we kind of know that this is coming. I don't think this is necessarily bad, but just be aware that, this will soon be, potentially coming to a state where you operate. Okay, so here's probably one of the more important things to talk about. The ACA 401k, I'll probably go over a little bit more broader. ACA, it's we're in the 13th year of it now, and in years prior, we've seen people at Proliant, penalties for a 40 location group, 30 location group, anywhere between $350,000, $500,000, whatever. But back in the earlier days, they used to give a lot of good transition, good faith transition relief, where if you tried and you were trying to get together, you could prove intent. A lot of those penalties would be significantly reduced or completely waived. That went away. So that went away about a year ago. And also in December of just this last December, the IRS started sending penalties out, kind of confirming that it's become more efficient in identifying and assessing the penalties for ACA noncompliance. And on top of that, the ACA penalties have increased for this year. Chances are they're going to go for a lot more people to kind of pop for these things. They're not going to be as lenient as they have been before. The top, food services is in the top 3 industries at most risk of getting penalties. The things that typically I've seen, that are the highest, where they're getting hit is, affordability, proof of offer of coverage, and not offering coverage when they're actually eligible. And so part of that is making sure you have a system that can track all the records, tracking eligibility, tracking affordability. And I've actually seen this, when I'm doing implementations with large groups, when we're kind of going through there with the benefits team, that we're able to identify, hey, you're not really meeting your affordability on this. Here's the report to kind of show it based on the earnings. And I think those are a lot of the penalties that were kind of forgiven in the past that, we don't really see that trend continuing. Make sure you have a system that is going to ensure that everyone's being offered coverage, retaining those records. And in your business, if you have 5,000 employees, you might have, 200 people on the plan. So the declinations are actually even more important to make sure that you're tracking as they actually happen. So, if you're using a broker already, many of you probably have relationships with brokers. Most of them are using Employee Navigator. We have our own solutions to be able to do benefits enrollments, including carrier connections to the provider. But if you're using Employee Navigator, we can give that single sign-on integration so your employees can go in one place, not 4 different apps to forget passwords, and make sure that you remain compliant and they are able to decline or set up their coverage through your system. 401k, I am not a financial advisor, but this is something where you actually also need to be aware, because there's a lot of changes this year to your 401k plan. Depending on how you're set up, depending if you have a broker, make sure you benchmark. There's a lot of state mandated plans that are expanding. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the blue states and the green states they're already kind of happening. The other states is where they all have legislation. So this could affect you, potentially. Most of you, I'm assuming, probably have some 401k plan in place. If you don't have one for everyone, it could be potentially imposed upon you. So, we already deal with that wherever those are in place, and we're already integrated with just about every 401k provider that's out there. And if we're not, it's not too hard to set up an integration to keep you compliant. But certainly the recommendation there is, with all the changes that have happened in 401k, we don't sell benefits, we don't sell 401ks. So the advice there is just to make sure you benchmark it to make sure it's compliant for the changes that happened this year. This is something which I've been talking about for a while. I'm only putting up one example. And this one I'm going to read a little bit because it's so complicated. Predictive scheduling. It's been in New York for a while. It's been in Chicago for a while. There's states in California. There's a couple of local places. Oregon has a statewide. This is just an example. It's pretty complicated. You have to be able to provide, a complete schedule, or rather an idea of hours. You can't make changes within a certain amount of time, or, you pay penalties. It's very difficult to manage. So we've been actually working with this, since we've been in New York and California for, since our inception. So we have certainly partnerships and strategies to be able to remain compliant if that hits your state. Yeah, Oregon statewide, 9 cities currently have in place. 34 states are considering legislation to implement. It's been on dockets forever, but I think for sure you're going to start seeing this trickle out to more states, over time. So if this does happen in your state, we can certainly help you implement solutions to remain compliant. Here's where it's happening already in the red, and this is kind of a risk map. Just kind of showing you where the states which are highest at risk coming, where it might be affected. Of course, there's no guarantee of that because they have to pass legislation. But here's where it's kind of really being talked about, just to give you an idea. So before I go there's a couple of things, because there's so many things out there that that you need to be aware of. There's going to be employee state break laws, mandatory paid leave laws. That comes up all the time. So, those are really hard to track. If the employee isn't clocking out on that leave, how are you going to track that? How are you going to remain compliant? So we work with a lot of different operators on kind of putting in those automatically to make sure that that depending on how your state is, the legislation is in your state, we can certainly take care of that and get that going. Sick leave laws. There's already 17 states that have the paid sick leave laws, which we're already dealing and doing the accruals and the reporting on that. And those laws are pretty complicated as far as how they have to be reported to the employee, how it has to be showing up on the stub. Those are all things to take in consideration as those are expanding. But to this slide, which Bruce will go into another slide here in a second, which looks a lot like it. But Proliant's always been kind of focused on having one place to go integrated with all your systems, especially with our onboarding, to be able to put that information back into your system, to remove the manual entry, the fat fingering of the social security numbers. And if you're a OneDataSource client, we're going to be pulling that data from OneDataSource, because they already have the best aggregated reporting, certainly for POS, that we can work with. So that's kind of a no-brainer. That being said, we're going to be out at a lot of shows this year. So if you want to have a consultation, certainly if you want to learn anything about anything that I spoke to before, get the documentation, get the the citations of where I got this information, certainly feel free to reach out. Bruce, I'll hand it back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. A lot of information there to cover, and we're running a bit over time, and we started a few minutes late. And I promise to keep us on track. So I'll move through these last couple of slides quickly. If anybody has any questions, please drop them in the chat. Roger can watch the chat while I finish up here, and we can move on. So in any case, appreciate the handoff, Roger. And just to quickly touch on the value of our solutions, we really help operators build a comprehensive data strategy. We're touching almost every piece of your business, so we can centralize, standardize, your data, unlock its full potential, normalize it across brands, different points of sale or data sources, which really gives you the ability to scale and run efficiently, focus on operations where the real value is for your company. And then you gain insight having more timely and accurate data, and a lot of focus on workflows to really make everything efficient. Working with us, and why should we be involved in the payroll process? There are a couple of factors that I'll just touch on a few points here. It's really about visibility and control, like any other piece of your business, knowing what's going on with payroll, time clock records, et cetera. So, we really help. Various brands and systems may or may not also have this information, but it's not always exposed well to the area coaches, region coaches, people that aren't in the store. So, we make sure that we report on, approaching overtime, people who have been left on the clock and, haven't punched out on the right time. We run, for example, payroll pre-process, and that automatically goes out to operators to make sure that they handle any one-offs that would potentially hold up payroll processing. You never want, payroll to be a fire drill. We provide reporting to help you audit wages, to make sure that the wages that are set at the store are the same as you're actually paying people. So the in-store operators are actually working against the same cost of labor that'll end up showing up in their, P&L. And then we integrate the data for you with other vendors, like hot schedules, for example. Tip disbursements is a piece that Roger didn't mention. We don't see it a lot as much in QSR, but we're seeing it more with tip sharing, and then also disbursements to delivery drivers, earned wage, Roger mentioned, and then getting rid of all the manual activity. So we provide a lot of insight and help there with the payroll process. And then, the point working with OneVIEW and Proliant together, we've worked together for a good while now. We have a lot of mutual customers across many brands. And the things it does, it really allows you to reduce implementation time. A lot of the integration is already there. We're integrated with probably 30, 40 different POS and back office systems. So ramp up time is really quick. Standardizing data across multiple brands, multiple data, time clock systems within those different brands. And then, as I mentioned, with some of the reports and things we deliver, and Proliant also has very good reporting, getting alerts about anomalies just so you can respond before payroll's processed and prevent, the mistakes, which are expensive to correct. So those are some points there about working with us together with Proliant. Just creates a really good package. So anyway, if there are any questions, the only one that I've seen, Roger, was a question about hourly team members using earned wage access, or do salary managers also use that?
That can be accessed by anybody. That's really in the choice of the employees. I think we've seen both salary and hourly take it. Mostly it's hourly, but we certainly have seen hourly workers take it. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the only question I've seen pop up. So I know we've gone over time and got some people starting to drop off. So really appreciate everybody joining us, and we'll get the recording out to you next week. Thanks a lot.